knowing the shortcuts on BandLab is just going to make your life so much easier. And I've got here a small project using just pre-made drums so far and some keyboard. Sounds like this. But I'm now going to go through a list of shortcuts that if you memorize them, if you take the time to memorize them, it's going to make your life so much quicker when it comes to creating music. You're not going to have your creativity interrupted because you don't know how to do something. And funnily enough, there is a shortcut itself to open up the shortcut menu. Obviously, you might have noticed it's down here. You can just click on this, but maybe you're lazy. And shortcuts are all about lazy people. If you press Control/, there's your shortcut menu. And there's a bunch of shortcuts which will help you speed up your creation process. Now, I should mention that I'm on an Apple laptop, which means instead of Control, I have a Command button, and instead of Alt, I have an Option button. So whenever you see this symbol here, which looks a little bit like a downward slope, for Windows computers, which we use at school, that'll be an Alt button, or ALT. And this right here looks a bit like, I don't know, a flower. That's the Apple Command button, which is essentially the same as a Windows Control button. So these would all say Control C, Control V, Control X, Control A, Control Z, Control Shift Z in school. But mine has this little flower symbol, I suppose. So let's go through these one at a time. The Slice Region shortcut, or S. If you bring your note head over a track and you click on that track and then you press S, it's now been sliced. What does that mean? Well, I've cut it into two. If I undo real quick, it was originally one large blue rectangle. I've sliced it. It's now two rectangles. That can be really useful if you've inserted a sample and you really like it, but for whatever reason you don't like, I don't know, the final bit. Or maybe you do like the final bit, but you want to put it later. You can now slice it, and you could slice it as many times as you like, or as fine as you like. Here's a really tiny little slice there. Isn't that cool? Anyway, let's undo that and unsew that. That's what slice does. Quantize. Now this only really makes sense with MIDI data. You can't quantize pre-made samples, but you can quantize MIDI data. Lovely. So what I have here then, if I double click, is my piano recording, and it's not bad, but it's definitely not in time. I tried my best to do it in time, but it definitely won't be in time. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to highlight it all, or there is actually a shortcut for highlighting it all, which is Control A. Hey, now they're all highlighted. And if you press Q on your keyboard, it should automatically snap all of these notes to their nearest beat. In this case, I think they're all snapping to the nearest 16th note, or semiquaver, or it's possibly quavers, but it's snapping it to the nearest beat, so it should sound nice now. So that one there wasn't quite snapped to the right place, so I am going to have to go and sort of comb through this to make sure it is definitely what I want it to sound like. And this one here seems like it's a little bit out of time, so I'm going to put that there. That sounds wrong too. This bit sounds nice. That last bit sounds nice. This bit didn't sound so good, so I'm going to have to go through and again fine comb my way until it sounds what I wanted. Come on. That's better. But yeah, the Q tool, or the quantize tool, is really useful for quickly making your MIDI music sound in time. So that's what that does. Now, move playhead or a note. This is very simple. If you press left or right, it moves your playhead. And if you're in MIDI data and you've got a note, say like that, left and right will move that note left and right. Pressing up and down will also move it up and down. Who would have guessed? Next up, we've got up or down, which I've just shown you. It transposes the note by one semitone. What does that mean? It moves it up or down by a single semitone. If you hold down Shift and press up and down, it will move it up an octave. This is going to be really useful if you're making a bass line and it's not bassy enough and you need to lower the whole thing an octave. You you can highlight it all, press shift and down, and then suddenly it's an octave lower, or an octave lower, or an octave lower. Backspace or delete obviously deletes things. That's a really common shortcut. You probably all know how to copy and paste. If you don't know how to do it quickly, you highlight something, you press Control C, you then move your playhead where you want it to be, and then you press Control V. I don't know what the V stands for. Obviously C stands for copy, V, I don't know. Control X is how you quickly cut something. Cutting is pretty much the same as deleting, except when you delete it, you've also copied it, so you could paste it somewhere else. So it's delete and copy at the same time. Control A is what I said earlier. It's when it highlights everything. Now, if you're in this screen where you're looking at all of your project in total, Control A will highlight all of your regions. However, if you are inside a MIDI region like this, so I'm making a little piano melody, if you press Control in this screen, it will highlight all of the melody you've made there. Notice how it hasn't made all of these drum layers turn white. If I click on this bit and then do it, now they're all white. But if I go into my keyboard part, sometimes you have to click within the MIDI region itself to do it. There you go. Now this is all white and selected. Lovely. What's next? Select all, Control A, undo. This is a classic one. If you do something and you make a mistake, maybe you put a note in the wrong place, Control Z undoes that, and then Control Shift Z redoes it. That is probably the most important shortcut you will ever learn ever. So please learn it. Duplicate a region or note. This is really handy. A lot of you know how to loop. If you click on this little loop icon in the corner and you do this and you drag it, you're looping that part. The problem with this is you might sometimes not want to loop it entirely, or if you loop it now but you want to come back and edit this part of the blue region, you can't really without messing up this portion that you've looped. So what's a better idea is either to copy and paste, by Control C and then Control, where's my grid gone? Control V. That's a quick way of doing it. But an even quicker way is by pressing the Alt key, holding it down, clicking and dragging, and now I've got a copied version ready to let go wherever I want. That is super easy, and that's super useful if you want to copy a drum beat, lots of times in a row. So that is the Alt plus drag option. Moving on to these tools, we've got toggle automation with A. So if I press A on this screen, it will bring up these lines. Now, a lot of you have learned to use these lines. By default, these lines will control volume. You can see here it says volume, 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 volume. And if I draw a line here, if I put a dot here and a dot here and I drag it down, I now have the volume decreasing. And obviously, if I want to do the opposite, I will draw a line so it goes uphill. That's fine. So that's obviously useful for having fade-ins or fade-outs. However, automation deserves its own video. Automation is incredibly powerful. You can do so many cool things with automation to make your song sound really professional. You can automate pretty much anything. Automating volume is useful. Automating pan is useful, so you can have something fade from the left ear to the right ear or vice versa. But you could, for example, have the amount of reverb on your instruments automatically change. You could have the amount of distortion or chorus automatically change. You could have the intensity of a delay change. That you could do so much with automation. Automation is incredibly powerful. Toggle cycle. So if you press C, you might notice that this rectangle up here is going red or not really red. This bar is called a cycle bar, and some people have accidentally turned this on and not known how to turn it off or what it even does or what's the point. Basically, when it is bright red like this, when I press play, no matter where my playhead is, it will always play from this bit to this bit. Oh, or will it? There we go. Now if I pause it and I press play again, it goes from there. If I drag the mouse over here, oh, fail. It's not doing what it should. Okay, so maybe it doesn't always jump back where it should. What it does do is when you play it within this region, it will get to this point here, and then it will immediately rewind back to here and play it again. Why would you want to do that? Maybe you're trying to add effects to your instruments and you want to keep on listening to the music whilst you're changing the effects. So let's say I wanted to add some effects to this keyboard part. So I've pressed play. It should hopefully loop back at this point. Yep, it has. So now I can go into the effects panel and start messing around with an effect. And I can change the effect whilst the music is still going. And I can just gauge, what is the effect even doing? Is it worth it? It doesn't seem to be doing much, which is kind of interesting. Am I adding it to the wrong thing? I totally am. I'm trying to add an effect to the drums. I should be adding an effect to the keyboard. Here we go, I can hear something now. So I'm finding that adding this reverb and increasing the size and the mix is making it echo quite a lot more, making it quite dreamy, which maybe I want, maybe I don't. But the cycle function allows you to keep on listening to the same music whilst you mess around with effects and see what those effects are even doing. Lovely. What's next? Velocity mode. Now, we've not really talked about velocity at all, ever, but whenever you make a MIDI melody, and here's the worst MIDI melody in the whole world, I'm going to use cycle so I can actually repeat it over and over and over again. There we go, it's the world's worst melody. Now, by default, when you draw in a melody, the velocity for each note is the same. So what is velocity? Velocity is basically the volume of each note. So I've just clicked on the V here in the MIDI editor, but if you actually tap the letter V on your keyboard, it will do that for you. That's the shortcut. So what do you do with velocity? Well, you can control the volume of every single note, and this can be really precise. It basically controls the intensity of the instrument you're using. So you might want some of the piano notes to be more intense than others, or some of the guitar notes, or some of the drum hits, or some of the synth hits. You can control the intensity of every single note, and you can be really precise with the sort of effect you want to have. It can also make playing sound a lot more like a human instead of a machine, which obviously this is a machine at the moment. So that's what velocity does. Mute track, so whatever track you have selected, if you press Shift M, it's now muted. If you press it again, it unmutes it. Shift S solos it, so if I just want to hear my snare or my clap cymbals, clap sounds, turn off cycle, I can then unsolo that, and I can hear the rest. So Shift and S, Shift and M, really useful. Shift and T, you can very quickly add a new track, but you still have to select what kind of track you want, so it's not that much of a shortcut. Shift D duplicates that track. I find that's really useful if you've maybe made a melody, and again, here's the worst melody in the world, and at the moment it's on a piano, but maybe I want to duplicate it. Shift D, done, and I can make this version of that exact same melody. Maybe I could put this one on a, I don't know, synthesizer. So now I've got one for piano. Oh, no I don't, excuse me. I've got one for piano, and then I've got one for synthesizer. And I can have them together, why not? Cool, I've just doubled my layers, and I've made it slightly more unique sounding. We have got delete track. If you want to delete a track entirely, you don't want it anymore, you can press Shift and delete. So if I want to delete my MIDI note, I can do that, it's gone. But if I want to bring it back, I can press Ctrl Z, obviously. Let's look at some view shortcuts. L. This is a very quick way of bringing up the loop browser, which you will obviously be using if you want to use pre-made loops like I have done here. You can just press L. Or, likewise, if you want to get rid of this annoying menu so you can focus on your work, press L. And more shortcuts. Zoom out, Control and minus. This allows you to obviously zoom out, and likewise Control plus allows you to zoom in. You can also use the clicking version up here. MIDI editor vertical zoom. That means when you're making a melody using MIDI, you can press Alt followed by a plus and minus to basically change how much of the keyboard you can actually see. So you can see I'm zooming in on the keyboard. This might make it easier when you're trying to draw chords, or maybe when you're trying to draw a melody and you want to really clearly see which note of the keyboard you're even using. That's something you might want to think about using. Toggle shortcut tab, so Control and L. This actually is the shortcut to bring up the shortcuts, which I find is quite useful. Right, What is the next shortcut? Play and stop. Spacebar. Some of you don't even know that you can just press the spacebar and it will play. I feel like most of you know that, but if you don't, spacebar plays, and it also pauses it as well. Shift and space also plays it, but it will always play it from the start of the song. So rather than scrolling all the way to the beginning of your song, you can just press shift space and we're at the start. What is next? Record/stop recording. If you're using a MIDI keyboard and you're creating a melody, you can decide where you want to start recording from. And I want to start from the very beginning. And you could click this big red button and that will record, or you can just press the R button. Oh, or you can just press the big R button. And I'm now recording. So I could go like this. I just recorded some kind of melody, but I'm going to delete it because I didn't like it. Set playhead to the beginning of project. Enter. If you press enter, your playhead or your playback line will go back to the beginning of the project. That might be useful. Metronome and snap to grid. M for metronome. It's so important when you're making some kind of melody or some kind of chord sequence or some kind of drum beat that you make it to the metronome, even if you've never played with a metronome before. If you don't write your music to a metronome, it's not going to be in time. So if I go over here where there's no instruments playing and I turn off the metronome, it sounds like this. It sounds like nothing. However, if I put the metronome on, that clicking is the 4/4 time signature that my song is in, but you can hear it. So that is what I would record my drums to. That's what I'd record my chord progression to, my melody to. It has to be in time with that grid. And speaking of grid, the next shortcut is G. Now you might accidentally press G when you're working on BandLab, and you may not even realize what's happened. It affects this little button up here. It looks like a magnet. When it is blue, that means it's on. When it is white, that means it is off. Pressing G toggles between the two. When it is off, everything you click and drag will move at the absolute tiniest fractions. If I click on this blue and I drag it, it's dragging really slowly. And if I let go, that's now, oh hello, what's this? Sure. It's now somewhere between these two beats. It's somewhere really awkward. It's somewhere not musical. When you've got grid turned on, I should press G really. So now it's blue. Now when I click and drag it, it will snap to various points. It just snapped. Oh, this is annoying. Get out of here. It has snapped to this beat here. So it looks like the second semiquaver of bar 9, or the second beat of bar 9, I should say. Having the grid switched on will make sure that when you let go, hopefully your samples and your music will line up with the grid. Quite often, students will make music and all the parts sound good, but they're not quite in time because they've accidentally turned snap to grid off, and that's made all of their sounds go out of time. So basically make sure this is blue all the time. Unless there are some times when you might want to turn it off, but not often. Disable snap to grid or turn on note insert mode. When you're making MIDI, this basically, if you hold down control whilst you're in this menu, your cursor will change to a pencil. So basically this is a shortcut on how to write notes. Normally you can select notes and drag them and move them up and down, but if you hold down control, you can now add some notes. And then when you let go of control, it returns to a mouse and you can click on these notes and drag them around. Basically, you don't have to keep switching between the pencil and the mouse icon. You can stay on the mouse icon and just press control whenever you want to go to pencil mode. Let's get rid of all that. What's next? Shift plus A, ARM automation recording. I think this is the last one I'm going to talk about. So Shift plus A, you might not even notice what's even happened, but if I do it over and over and over again, you'll see that a red circle is appearing up here. We've already talked about automation being these lines that you click on here, move it up, move it down, and now I've got a little downwards hill. That downwards hill is going to make my hi-hats go lower in volume. But sometimes you want to add automation whilst the song is playing. You might want to do it in the heat of the moment. So by having automation armed, having this red circle filled in, and pressing the record button, what it's going to do is it's going to wait to see what I do with a certain effect or with volume. So I can actually turn off this automation. I can turn off these lines. This is armed. This red button here means the BandLab is armed to record automation. So let's say I want to lower the volume of this keyboard part. I can press record, and now while it's playing, I can lower the automation. I can lower the volume, sorry. And BandLab is listening to me do that. So when I stop recording and I go back to the automation lines, you can see all of these little points where BandLab has noticed I was lowering the volume, and it's saved all of them. So now I've got a really quite detailed lowering of the volume. This is quite a pointless example because it would be way quicker just to draw a line here, draw a line here, and just do it like that. That would be way quicker. But sometimes you might want to include really subtle changes in volume. Your volume might be going gradually up and down all the time, or your effects might be gradually going up and down all the time.